Page 8, Hannah from Montana. I want to talk about a few things here because this is different than what we've had before. At the top of the page, they have that thing introducing eighth notes. Apparently you haven't had eighth notes. An eighth note gets a half of a quarter, or there's two eighth notes in a quarter note. All right. So if we count quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, then I put an and in between each number, and that represents the eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, or however I'm counting. That way I can keep track of the eighth notes. Now in Hannah from Montana, we're only going to count to 3, not 4. We've been counting to 4 because the numbers at the beginning of each step were 4, 4 before. Too many 4s in there. Now it's 3, 4. So the top number tells you how far to count. Now we're only going to count to 3. And the bottom number tells you what you're counting, which is still quarter notes. The 4 stands for quarter notes. So we're counting 2, 3. Ugh, that's too many numbers in all this junk. We're going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, etc. And the quarter note is the sort of what we're counting in any other kind of note. The quarter note is the reference. It's the note we're looking for, and we adjust other notes accordingly. For instance, in the left hand at the beginning of this, you see that dotted half note. It's a half note with a dot behind it. Well, without going into a whole lot of details, supposedly if they're giving you this, you already know what a dotted note is. That's nice. A dotted half note is equal to 3 quarter notes. Since a quarter note gets a beat, then a dotted half note is going to be equal to 3 beats. Comes in handy because that's what the measure is, 3. Now, a half note gets 2 quarter notes, or it's the same as 2 quarter notes, so a half note is still just 2 counts. So on this first line, if I play the left hand by itself and count it, it's this way. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And when I do this, I kind of collapse my wrist with the count. You don't have to. It's just the thing I do. It's important to keep your wrists loose, and this helps me do that. It's a personal thing. The notes in the hands are not necessarily playing at the same time, and that gets tricky. And that's why we have to take this and kind of learn it one hand at a time first, and then when you got it, you can put the hands together, which is a whole nother adventure in itself. So the right hand on that first line is this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, tie, 2, 3. I said tie, 2, 3. Did you catch that? The last 2 notes in the right hand on the first line, you have a half note, a dotted half note, and they're got that little line. It looks like a phrase mark. It's not. It's a tie. It means tie the notes together, which means you play the first note and hold it down for both notes. In other words, that D at the end of the first line is going to get 5 counts. 2 for the half note and 3 for the dotted half note. It's going to hold it all the way down. Won't that be fun? Oh boy. So both hands together on the first line would be this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Go over that however much you have to until you're comfortable with it, because the music is only going to get more involved as we go through this book. So be sure and get it now. You're just not going to be playing notes in each hand at the same time. Now let's go down and look at the last line in this piece. In the right hand, in the second measure, you see the eighth notes. Well, this is where the 1 and 2 and 3 and counting comes in. So if I do the first 2 measures of the last line and I count it out, it's this way in the right hand. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Can be tricky. Now, some people, when they count this and they see these in here, they will do the 1 and 2 and 3 and count throughout the whole thing. I tend to do it where I need it. So I would just go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 until I get there, and suddenly I've got to change it to 1 and 2 and 3 and to accommodate those eighth notes. Eventually, the counting will come natural to you and you can think it, or feel it actually, and you'll get it. It's only when it gets really tricky you have to stop and actually count it out. Now they have a thing at the bottom of the page, how to count. I don't understand their dots. I didn't get into it too much. I've explained to you how I count and it works, so I would recommend you do that. Now they're putting a slight emphasis on the 1 count 1, and that is because the first beat of every measure is what we call a natural accent. It's an accent, but it happens naturally. You just naturally give it a little emphasis. It's like a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. You don't try and make it a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. It just happens. You feel it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Well, you play what you feel. So if you can feel that natural accent, you'll play it. So it's that. And you can hear it. It's just a very slight. You don't make it happen. You let it happen. In time, it'll happen. Just think. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you're counting to 4, then it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, like that. So for now, on the natural accents, I'll talk more about them later. First beat of a measure is a natural accent. It's the strongest natural accents. There are others. We'll get into that later. So just as well get it while you're getting everything else. I mean, if you're going to be confused, let's go for broke, right? Third line. This gets a little tricky because the hands are doing different things. And again, with all these rests and everything going on, you simply have to count it out. One hand at a time if you have to get it, and then you can put the hands together. So if I demonstrate the third line for you, it's this way here. It's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. And that's the way that works. In the second measure, you have a half note. And then the left hand comes in on the third beat after the half note's done. And then in the last measure, you have another half note. And then the right hand comes in on the third beat after that note's done. What am I getting at? Well, there's phrases. See the phrases? Now in the first couple of lines, only the right hand has phrases. The left hand, there's no phrases. You just connect all the notes in the left hand, don't worry about it. But when you get to that third line, both hands get the melody and there's phrases for it. Well, in that second measure, when you're playing that half note, that's the end of a phrase. So before you play the next note, the note in the left hand, you got to lift up so we get a little bit of silence between it. It's like you were going to do this, except now you're doing this. You're lifting up, but you're using the other hand to go down rather than the same hand. So it's that. So the phrasing is between the two hands there. Just put a little silence in between them. That's all it is. Don't make it hard. We got plenty of time later on to make it hard. Don't do that yet. So I'd like to try this out very, very slowly with you. I'll give us 3 counts. The count I give us to start is based on the time signature. So if it's a 4-4, I'm going to give us 4 counts. If it's a 3-4, I'm going to give us 3 counts. I like to give us the equal to 1 complete measure before we come in. And that's what we're doing. So go ahead and put your hands in C position. Like so. And here we go. 1, ready, go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 3, off.